Today, I want to share 3 stories from my life. It's nothing extraordinary, just 3 simple stories. Each one has had a profound impact on who I am today, and I believe they'll offer valuable lessons for you as well. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of college after my first 6 months. It wasn't an easy decision, but I stayed on intermittently for another 18 months before leaving for good. Why did I drop out? It started even before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unmarried graduate student. She decided to put me up for adoption, and everything was arranged for me to be adopted by a well-educated couple, a lawyer and his wife. But when I was born, they changed their minds at the last minute. They wanted a girl instead. My parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night, asking, "We have a newborn boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." Later, my biological mother found out that my adoptive mother hadn't graduated from college, and my father had never finished high school. She initially refused to sign the adoption papers, but after a few months, when my parents promised that I would one day go to college, she changed her mind. That was the start of my life. 17 years later, I went to college, but I made the mistake of attending an expensive school, nearly as costly as Stanford. My working-class parents spent all their savings on my tuition. After 6 months, I realized that I wasn't learning what I needed. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was wasting my parents' life savings, and I wasn't closer to figuring it out. So I made the decision to drop out. It was terrifying, but looking back, it was one of the best choices I've ever made. When I dropped out, I stopped attending the classes I wasn't interested in and started taking those that really fascinated me. Though these didn't lead to a degree, I was following my curiosity, and it made all the difference. It wasn't easy though. I had no place to stay, so I often slept on the floors of friends' dorm rooms. I would return empty Coke cans for 5 cents each to get food. Sometimes I'd walk 7 miles across town to eat a good meal at the Hare Krishna temple, but I loved it. I was finally living authentically, and I felt like I was learning more than I ever could have in a classroom. It was during this time that I discovered that following my intuition and curiosity led to some of the most valuable lessons in my life. Let me give you an example. At the time, Reed College offered what was probably the best calligraphy course in the country. Every poster on campus and all the labels on the drawers were beautifully hand-lettered by students. Since I was no longer attending regular classes, I decided to take the calligraphy course. It fascinated me, and I had no idea how it would affect my future. In the course, I learned about serif and sans serif fonts, the spacing between letters, and what makes great handwriting. It was beautiful and artistic in a way that science couldn't explain. It was something that touched me deeply, though I had no idea how it would fit into my future. Fast forward 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer. Suddenly, everything made sense. The work we had done in the calligraphy class had a direct impact on the design of the Mac. We designed everything on the Mac, and it became the first computer with beautiful typography. The fonts, the multiple typefaces, and proportional spacing, it all came together. Had I not taken that calligraphy class, the Mac would have had a very different design. It would have lacked the beautiful typography that became its hallmark. In fact, when Windows copied many features from the Mac, including the fonts, it became clear that the Mac had set the standard. It's funny, at the time, there was no way I could have known that this class would influence the way computers looked. But looking back, it all makes perfect sense. This brings me to an important point. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. The dots always make sense in hindsight. You have to trust the dots will connect in the future, even if they don't seem to fit together now. Trusting your intuition, following your curiosity, and relying on fate, karma, or whatever you believe in, is crucial. It's a lesson I've learned through experience, and it has never let me down. The second story I want to share is about love and loss. I've been incredibly fortunate. From an early age, I knew what I wanted to do. When I was 20, my friend Steve Wozniak and I started Apple in my parents' garage. We worked tirelessly, day and night. Within 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a small garage to a multi-billion-dollar company with over 40 employees. By the time I was in my late 20s, we had launched the Macintosh and it was a success. But when I turned 30, something unexpected happened. I was fired from the company I had created. How does that happen? Well, over the years, we had hired someone I thought was very talented to help run the company. For the first year, everything went well. but eventually our visions for the future started to diverge, and we had a disagreement. The board sided with him, and at 30, I was out of the company I had built. It was public, painful, and devastating. For a while, I had no idea what to do next. The focus of my entire adult life had been ripped away from me, and I felt lost. I even thought about leaving Silicon Valley altogether. But after a few months of reflection, I realized something. What had happened with Apple didn't change my love for the work I was doing. So, I decided to start over. I didn't fully understand it at the time, but being fired from Apple was, in hindsight, one of the best things that ever happened to me. Losing the pressure of running a large company allowed me to become a beginner again. I no longer felt burdened by success or expectations. It freed me up to be more creative and explore new opportunities. In the next 5 years, I started 2 new companies, Next and Pixar. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer-animated movie, Toy Story, which became a global success. It also established itself as the most successful animation studio in the world. In an unexpected turn of events, Apple bought Next, and I returned to the company. The technology we had developed at Next became the foundation for Apple's future success. During that time, I also met a wonderful woman who became my wife, and we built a beautiful family together. None of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. What seemed like a failure at the time actually set the stage for a new and better chapter in my life. It was a bitter medicine, but it was one I needed to take. Life has a funny way of teaching us important lessons, even when we don't understand them in the moment. The third story I want to share is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that said, "If you live each day as if it were your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." This quote stuck with me. For the past 33 years, I've made it a habit to ask myself every morning, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? If the answer is no for too many days in a row, I know I need to make a change. Remembering that we are all going to die is the most important tool I've found for making important decisions in my life. When you truly grasp the reality of your mortality, it clears away the trivial fears and distractions. Pride, embarrassment, the fear of failure, and you are left with what truly matters. When you realize that your time is limited, you stop worrying about what you have to lose. You understand that you're already naked. There's nothing holding you back from following your heart. Death is something that we all share. It's the one thing we can count on in life, and even though nobody wants to die, it's part of the human experience. The truth is, death is life's greatest invention. It's what creates change, clears away the old and makes room for the new. And as tragic as it may sound, it's a reality that allows us to appreciate life even more. Life is short, and your time is limited. So don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Stay hungry, stay foolish.